This is another iRaw podcast.
Welcome to our hen house. This is Jasmine Singer.
And this is Marianne Sullivan.
That was very funny.
I was trying to change it up.
Do you say that like every time you walk into a room? That'd be great.
Yes.
Well,
yes, I do.
Anyway, we're really excited that you are joining us for this week's show. Marianne's guest is an icon of the animal rights movement, Ingrid Newkirk, who is, of course, a founder of PETA. And Ingrid, of course, started caring about animals before almost anyone else did. And she's here to talk about her new book, written with Jean Stone, called Animal Kind: Remarkable Discoveries About Animals and Revolutionary New Ways to Show Them Compassion. And I am so excited about this book and that she's joining you on the bonus segment.
Yes, the bonus segment is available, of course, to all of our flock members. And she'll be talking about her childhood in India and kind of some of the connections that made to her feelings about animals and about a bunch of other things. So if you are a member of the flock, you'll get the email the Tuesday after this podcast goes up with that link. You can always find it on the flock Facebook page. If you're not a member of the flock, you can join for $10 a month at ourhenhouse.org/donate.
And speaking of Ingrid Newkirk, she actually wrote the foreword to the anthology that we discussed last week on the show, Voices for Animal Liberation, Inspirational Accounts by Animal Rights Activists. And last week we had the editor and person who put the whole book together, Brittany Michelson, on the show. And I also am a contributor to that. So I read a piece of my chapter and Brittany read a piece of hers. And I had a really lovely time this past weekend because the LA book launch happened in LA. Very convenient.
That was so well planned.
Yeah. And it was 12 people who are of the 27 contributors, 12 people came and read. And
wow.
I know it was
like I know there all night.
Well, most people just read one page. So it was read a little bit it was a little bit more like a salon than full on reading. Lovely. Yeah, it was. It was really impressive. There was like Chase Avier, I don't know if I say his name right, and Matt Braun, who is an undercover investigator, and Amy Jean Davis, who's been on the podcast recently, the founder of LA Animal Save, and Gwenna Hunter, and Corey Mack, and a bunch of other people, Sean Monson and Will Tuttle, who's always lovely. And it was really inspiring. And there were some badass people there. It was just like a few of the people reading kind of got a little verklempt because they were in such a safe space. You know, we were at Avo Cafe in Santa Monica, and a lot of the people in the audience would just start cheering. And can you imagine if life existed like that? Like every time we got verklempt, there was like a room full of people say, "You got this. You're beautiful."
That's exactly what I need in life.
I'll do it. I'll do it for you.
Yeah, I need it. I mean, every once in a while, you really got to find those safe spaces. I haven't been in one for a while. I mean, not that my life is in any way dangerous. I don't mean that, of course. But by safe space, you mean, and I mean just a place where everybody thinks it's a really, really important thing to not eat animals and to care about them. And you don't have to explain it at all.
Well, and then the thing about this event, too, is that, like, it was at a vegan cafe. It was packed. There were a lot of people there. And yet, I would say the whole audience was like animal rights people, like the hardcore, And the reason I say that is because, it wasn't so much of an advocacy event as it was like a celebration and acknowledgement of each other and of our important work. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so it was great. Nice. And Avo Cafe is always good. Nice. Yeah. If you do find that safe space though now, you'll have to do it virtually because
I think this is this right here is my virtual safe space.
That's right. I love that. Well, the flock too is,
exactly.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, that is a terrifying and perfect entry point to some of the things we wanted to chat about this week, which, the coronavirus, I guess everyone is talking about it.
Well, how do you talk about anything else when that's all anybody talks about?
Yeah, I know. But I went shopping this weekend and I'm like pointing right now to my table, like as if you're here with me. I'm trying to get 3 weeks supply of food. And I know that like a lot of people are thinking that's panicking or that's unnecessary. And I just want to be really clear. I tried to say this last week. Like, I hope I don't get it, but if I do get it, like I'm 40 and I'm not in the most high risk group by any means at all. I'm pretty healthy. I don't know.
Thank you for that. I don't
have I don't have any underlying health problems that I know of, and so it's not so much about me getting it. I'm scared of like being in positions where I would pass it on to others.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people feel that way, and I as being in the somewhat higher risk group, because I am pushing 70, as they say, and I'm pushing it pretty hard. Yeah, I appreciate that so many people really are not personally at risk, but they understand that they're putting others at risk, that we have to slow this down. We have to slow the spread down because the people who are at risk can't all get it really bad at the same time. And of course, everybody's a tiny bit at risk. I mean, I think anybody could get a bad case even if they don't know they're in a risk group. But for the vast majority of people, it's really protecting the herd. Not so much protecting themselves. And I do feel like I'm a little bit in the, I could die. But plenty of other people are too.
Well, and we just have to, like, I think, make really smart and conscious decisions about where we're going and how often we're showing up in large public, spaces.
Yeah, well, you keep telling me I shouldn't go anywhere ever at all whatsoever.
I don't want you
to. That's your opinion of what I should do. I
agree with myself.
Yes.
No, I think it's okay. If you want to take the dog, if you want to take Rose out to town or something, but I don't really love the idea of you going into the city on the train and through the subway down to NYU where there's like
I have to figure that. Yeah, I have to figure it out. Like, why is so far NYU is not canceling or saying anything about classes, which
or
loads of
making
universities
them virtual.
Are putting classes online for the rest of the semester.
I'm not okay with that. Yeah.
Well, You're not okay with not doing that.
I am not okay with the way that is being handled. And I think that there needs to also be something implemented and people at the ready to help adjuncts like you and professors and anybody who needs to set up their class to be virtual. I think anything else is irresponsible.
It does seem like just the way to go. I mean, it protects everybody. It's not forever. It's almost the end of the semester. Well, not almost, but we're halfway through. So all of those relationships have been formed. I already know all my students. It's not like, I think it would be harder to do it all the time. But, I think this is something we have to, not just for schools, but in general, in the world, we have to learn how to do things virtually because we can't be flying everywhere and going to these meetings. So, in a way, it almost feels like where the whole coronavirus experience is prepping us for what we need to do to address climate change.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And speaking of prep and climate change, I'm staring at, I just walked over to my table.
Oh, yeah. So I have been also putting food in. I don't really know why. I think it just makes me feel safe. I think we will continue to be able to get deliveries, and I don't think there's any reason to believe I'm going to run out of food, but I'm not going to deny it. Yeah,
I know, but you don't know. Lentils. Like, what about?
There's a lot of lentils in my house.
That's
a
good.
lot.
You're fine then.
All right, so tell me.
Well,
No, you can live on lentils.
Yeah, I'm trying to do 3 weeks of food, and honestly, I live in LA.
So what is that?
Well, I'm telling you. So I live in LA, and one thing that I've been meaning to do anyway is put together an earthquake kit, which I'm. Definitely there's overlap with this. Not completely, because an earthquake kit would not rely on electricity or
Well, also a climate kit, there. I think we have to start thinking in terms of everybody's going to think I'm the Unabomber. I don't know. But I get so nervous talking about this. But it's not just the Unabomber that has to prep anymore. It's like there could be food shortages. Maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to put some stockpiles in.
Yeah, so I'm doing a lot of, I do want to talk to you about some of the websites you told me about, but I decided to do it myself because I want to have food that I would actually eat. I'm putting in my calendar reminders of when to rotate food out and back in, mostly cans of food or other things. So I have a lot of cans of food. I have a lot of soups, like Amy's soups.
I have a lot of lentils.
A lot of canned vegetables, canned fruit. I have quick oats, which would not be good for the earthquake kit because you have to cook it. But I have quick oats. I have some quick quinoa, which is already cooked. I have aseptic soy milk containers. I have powdered soy milk.
What is an aseptic soy
shelf
milk
stable?
container?
Shelf stable.
You mean just like a box of soy milk
which obviously eventually has to go in the refrigerator, so that's not good for the That's not good for the earthquake kit, but I have instant coffee, bottles of, large jugs of water.
My God, you live in a one-bedroom apartment. Where is all this
wine,
stuff?
weed, tampons. True, I do.
All right. I think we're gonna cut you off there because this is getting a little.
I'm putting them under the
personal.
So I have like a bench, like kind of like a kitchen bench, almost like a kitchen booth, and got a bunch of containers from IKEA, and they're pretty innocuous looking containers, and everything's going under the bench in those innocuous looking containers that will hopefully blend in with the wall. So this just totally fits your personality. Nothing has ever made you happier than having getting too much
coming
stuff
home from the grocery store with a whole bunch of food and stocking all the cabinets and making and feeling like so.
No, there is one thing that makes me happier than that.
This just fits into your personality.
There is one thing that makes me happier than that, which is having a lot of toilet paper.
Yeah.
And so I use the company Who Gives a Crap, which I told you about the other day. It's just they do really great work. It's all recycled, and they give back to help people who don't have toilets get toilets, and you buy it in bulk so it lasts many months. I love it so much. I love the company Who Gives a Crap. They're not in any way endorsing this podcast. I just personally like them. So I just got my my stash of toilet paper. And I got, just to keep for one more second, I got an entire gallon of Dr. Bronner's soap the other day.
Oh my God.
It was like $65.
A gallon?
It was so expensive.
Well, I guess if we do have to wash our hands every 3 minutes, that is the way to go.
Well, and they support animal rights.
You'll use it up in a week.
No, they support animal rights. They support our hen house. And
I'm not objecting to Dr. Bronner's in any way.
I know.
I didn't realize it came in a gallon size.
It's
huge.
huge.
A lot of soap.
It's so big. It's so big. Yeah. Anyway, so that's pretty much
I bought.
What about you?
Bars of Dr. Bronner's soap.
Oh, okay. I've heard of bars.
That way, it's not in a plastic container.
Right. No, I mean, this is.
I'm better than you. It turns out.
Well, we've known that.
Actually, better than you.
Yeah, you've told me that many times in the past decade and a half. So, but what you told me about some website? What was some websites that you could buy? Like a month.
Yeah, I don't remember the name of it.
Food storage guys.
Food storage guys. Yeah, and you could buy like canned vegan food. God knows,
it's not just canned.
Terrible.
It's also like dehydrated that you rehydrate.
Yeah.
And you could.
This is serious preppers.
Yeah, no, that was serious. You could buy a year's supply, and it's good for 25 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even you can be the last person on the planet.
I was just talking to
and just be fine.
I was just talking to a friend of mine, and she was telling me about like an event she was at. It was like a vegan event. And she said that everyone at the event, like she felt weird about going because she doesn't want to be around a lot of people. And that everyone at the event was like, should we hug? We're not supposed to hug. Should we hug? Okay, well, let's just hug. And then everyone would like hug. She was like, I don't know what to do when people say that to me. Like, I mean, even unfortunately, even vegans can get this, and we should stop hugging each other.
Vegans do like to hug. What is that? Like, we all hug. We hug upon introduction.
It is a little weird, but
that's really
Have
rare.
you ever had that like dance where like someone puts their hand out and you put your arms out to hug, and then you switch and your hand is out to shake and they go to the hug, and then it's like this little like back and forth dance? Yeah, that happens a lot.
I actually turned down a handshake today. Do you think I'm becoming extreme?
Ooh, what did you say?
I just said I'm not shaking hands, and they totally got it.
Just do like an elbow bump.
It wasn't an embarrassing moment. It was somebody who this young man who was coming in to take care of Rose. I was showing him the ropes, and so he was totally understanding about it. And Rose was madly in love with him because Rose loves men.
You said that the bane of her existence is that she wound up with vegan lesbians.
Seriously. She's like,
that's so funny.
I mean, Rose is very, very old. We all understand that. She does not play a lot.
Like
she's
16,
like kind of like jumping up to play with him. And it was very sweet.
It makes me very, very happy. Yeah. Well, I'm excited about hearing Ingrid, and I think we should move in that direction. But before we do that, I do want to mention something. We had someone from Food for Thought on the podcast, I think last year, maybe 2 years ago, and I just this kind of wound up in my inbox, and we decided to mention it again because it's such a great program. Food for Thought is an international campaign organized by Animal Place, one of the oldest and largest farmed animal sanctuaries in the U.S. The Food for Thought campaign encourages animal welfare, environmental protection, and social justice nonprofits to serve only vegan food at their fundraisers and other sponsored events. They believe that this is a very simple step that creates an official policy to serve only vegan food at these events, and it lets these nonprofits best follow their missions of compassion and sustainability. I love this.
And we know that a lot of you listening work with other organizations, whether they're dog and cat organizations or things that don't have to do with animals, that and you would like, I mean, that's something that we can all do when we do work with other people in other social justice areas, is encourage them to serve vegan food. And I just think it's nice to know there's help out there when you want to do that. And that's the job of Food for Thought. That's what they've set out to do, to help people who want to work on getting other places to serve vegan food. So I think it's
I do too. They've had over 400 shelters and wildlife rescues and environmental protection groups adopt an animal and earth-friendly policy for these fundraisers, and if they do offer grants and subsidies to help nonprofits transition to vegan policy. So
and advice.
So you could go to foodforthoughtcampaign.org and find out more. And now, switching gears, a gear I've been excited to switch into, for Marianne's interview with Ingrid Newkirk. Ingrid really doesn't need an introduction, but here it goes anyway. She is the president and founder of People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals and a former Washingtonian of the Year. She has been featured for her work for animals in the New Yorker, Time Magazine, People Magazine, Forbes, the Financial Times, and so many other publications. We can't even list them all. Ingrid has appeared on television shows all over the world, and she is the subject of a BBC special and the incredible HBO documentary, I Am an Animal. She is also the co-author of the newly released book, Animal Kind, Remarkable Discoveries About Animals and Revolutionary New Ways to Show Them Compassion. Ingrid Newkirk will be joining Marianne right after this. Did you know that you can dedicate a podcast episode to someone you love? For $200, you can not only honor a loved one, human or non, but at the same time support our Henhouse's efforts to change the world for animals. And as a bonus, we'll throw in a 1-year flock membership. Our Henhouse is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we rely on your contributions to support our efforts to change the world for animals. We've been on the air every single week without missing one since January 2010. For more information on how to dedicate a podcast episode or just to throw us some cash, visit ourhenhouse.org/donate. Welcome to our hen house, Ingrid.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be here.
It is such a pleasure to have you here. I'm so excited to talk to you about your new book and about everything that you're doing and everything that you've done. But let's start by talking about this book, Animal Kind, because when I got it, I was really surprised because it's really about animals. I mean, why did you decide to write a book that focuses so much on animal behavior, not just about animal activism and all of the wonderful things about animals?
Well, I think the subtitle probably explains a little bit. It's Animal Kind, Remarkable Discoveries About Animals and Revolutionary New Ways to Show Them Compassion. And that's always been what PETA's been about. From our founding moments, we have thought, lots of people care about animals. A lot of people say, I love animals, but they haven't connected all the dots. And I certainly hadn't when we started. And that's why we have the group in the book, is to say, look, animals are jaw-droppingly amazing. Their talents are extraordinary. Their communication abilities are phenomenal. They're emotional beings just as we are. You know, they cry, they laugh, they giggle. Rats giggle. And they grieve and they're lonely. And we sometimes don't treat them as we should. We don't respect them. We perhaps don't give them the credit that they're due. We see them as accoutrements to our own lives. Even the dogs in our home being pulled along down the street, you know, give them the time. So the first part is, wow, this is who animals are, stunning. And then the second part is, knowing all these things now, here are some fabulous ways in which you can start respecting them, start not even unwittingly contributing to their harm, their suffering, and their killing.
Yeah, it is a great way to introduce people to the idea of being active for animals, actually telling them things about animals that I never knew. I mean, I have always said that about myself. I am no expert on animals. I've never studied animals. I mean, I think they're really cool, But my main motivation has been that they shouldn't be treated so horribly. But it was really interesting to read all this stuff that I really never knew. Have you always been fascinated by animals in this sense and wanted to know more and more?
I think as time goes on, my interest has only grown. I mean, I started out with a dog at home. When I was born, there he was, and we grew up together. So I suppose we were fascinated with each other. We were brother and sister in the house. But over the years, having seen what people do to them and having seen the looks in their eyes, it gets harder and harder not to think about them and wonder what makes them tick. I thought I was an expert because I collect so much information about animals, and I have drawers full of it, which I suppose is not the high-tech thing to say, but I do have files and files of animal facts. And I'm always mesmerized by some new fact. But in researching this book, I found out a lot I had no idea about and thought, good grief, we are so ignorant when it comes to how clever they are.
Yeah, I have to admit that I felt the same way reading it. And of course, even scientists know so much more than they did a few years ago. There's been an amazing number of discoveries. But, frequently when I have somebody on, I suggest that our listeners who are already passionate about animals might be interested in their book as a gift for somebody else who wants to know more about animal activism. But I think anybody would enjoy reading this book just because I'm sure that loads of people don't know any of this. But let's get into tell us a few favorite facts that you, and of course, Jean Stone, I should mention, you co-wrote it with Jean Stone, that you discovered and researched as you were writing this book.
Oh, there are so many, but first, thank you so much for saying please buy it for someone who might have a hamster or a dog and hasn't really thought beyond that, because this could push them over the edge into activism, because activism is so easy. And also asking local libraries, please, on every local library's website, I just found out you can actually suggest books that you think they should carry. So that would be another way to reach people who,
that's a great idea.
They haven't got it yet. Oh, so many things. I mean, from the smallest to the biggest, from the least familiar to the most familiar. I learned that dogs are now being used by law enforcement officers who are busting child pornographers, because a dog's schnoz is so keen, they can sense so much, that they are able to detect a thumb drive that's hidden in a metal box, that's hidden in a metal cabinet. So they can help law enforcement more than a human law enforcement officer might be able to. I learned that elephants, and I already knew that they use subsonic communication. Elephants at one end of a park are able to send a message that is understood by elephants a mile or two away that says, hey, I know it's a drought, but we've found a pond with water. Or, very sadly, we're under attack over here. Maybe a zoo is taking the babies for their entertainment. Keep away. But I didn't know that elephant's trunk is also used as a snorkel when they swim, and they do swim if they can for the sheer joy of it. Places like Sri Lanka, if they're not chained up, they will jump into the ocean and they will just cavort about. But also, it's so delicate that they can pick up a paper clip with that trunk, the way we would use our thumb and our forefinger. I learned about so many communication methods, like moths using luminescence, that a part of their wing can vary in its color intensity and its light transmission that you can't see, but another moth can. And how a mouse can speak in ultrasound and another mouse will understand that. You won't even know they're saying anything.
Yeah, a lot in there about communication, which was mind-blowing. And, I notice when people talk about animals, and this just happened to me the other day, it's always about how smart they are. And, whether we think of them differently depending on how smart they are. And it's always with the assumption that they are smart, but not quite as smart as us. But smart is just such a human concept. And what do we really mean like us in a lot of ways, I think, when we say smart. But you are emphasizing so many other things. And you've talked about communication abilities, which is fascinating, but also emotional capacities like love and their enjoyment of playing. Like you were talking about the elephants just loving to jump in the ocean. Do you think that talking about these kind of things connect people to animals more than intelligence?
I don't know if more, but I think that they broaden our understanding of animals, that when people say, oh, don't be anthropomorphic. And fewer people say that nowadays because it's really kind of embarrassing. It's not as if the human animal is the sole species that possesses emotion. They all feel it. And yeah, I do think that people, especially the last Valentine's Day, we did a feature on how swans mate for life. Most birds mate for life. They could teach us a thing or two. I believe we have a divorce rate of 45% or so in this country. And they're very, very loyal. But other primates like us, chimpanzees, are not so loyal, and they cheat on their spouses and they do those sorts of things, which requires some sneakiness. So
that is something we do have in common with those chimpanzees.
Oh yes, and chimpanzees lie through their teeth. I think that's another thing. There's a famous, there was an experiment, I'm not in favor of it, but in Yerkes, where 2 baby chimpanzees had been taught American Sign Language. And they were being watched through a mirror. They didn't know they were being watched by a research student. One broke a toy. And so the research student went in and signed who broke the toy. And the one who broke the toy immediately pointed to the other one and signed, he did. So, I mean, we have so much in common.
They are definitely related to us. That's for sure.
Yeah, gorillas play tag and they take turns. You know, one will tag the other and and they'll take turns just as songbirds find it rude to interrupt, something that Piers Morgan might take a lesson from, is that they say something and they wait for the answer. And if somebody just butts in, then they just fly away.
Yeah, that's what we should do too. You know, you bring up an interesting point that a lot of what we know about animals is from experiments that we don't really approve of doing. How do we cope with that as a movement? And how do we get to know more about animals and satisfy this need, which actually is going to help animals without harming them?
Yes, well, some is, some isn't. And as you said, ethologists, people in the field, a lot of researchers who study animals without interfering with them, without encroaching, are learning a lot that we should be able to use to help inform the others. But for example, this morning, I'm not sure when you're airing this, but we've just revealed that one woman at the National Institutes of Mental Health has received $36 million over the last few decades for experiments that have gone nowhere, but which are so cruel on their face. She takes monkeys, injects toxins into their brains, then she puts them in a small box. And this box is not but a few inches bigger than their own bodies. And you can imagine being confined that way in this box and having problems trying to figure things out because your brain has been poisoned. And then she frightens them with rubber spiders and rubber snakes. That is her entire career that we have funded to the tune of $36 million. That's just one experiment. So we have psychologists primarily all over the world, certainly in the most funded country, the US, who are, and I'm not using this word cavalierly, who are torturing animals in untold, hideous, indefensible ways, who don't care that they feel. They're using them because they know they feel. They're using them because they know that they experience fear and they want to induce fear in them. And we need to rise up. We need to talk to our representatives. There's a Research Modernization Act that's going to go through the United States Congress. We need to talk to our government and say, cut off this rubbish. It's cruel, it's wasteful, and human beings need to be in treatment programs. We do not need to be torturing animals of any kind.
Yeah, that really brings us to, as you said, a good deal of this book is about animals and how extraordinary they are. But you link it, as of course you're Ingrid Newkirk, so of course you would, to what we should do about that and what is really happening to animals. And the second half of the book is really focused on really like a lot of positive stuff about how far we have advanced in being able to get animals out of industrial abuses and how people can advance that cause. But how they're still in it, even though we know all these things, even though we know how to get them out, though we know how we can replace things, it's still happening. And the argument has always been that we should only harm animals when it's necessary. That's what the law says. And you make this really good case that it's not necessary at all anymore, any of it. But, you know, it's pretty obvious that we never really meant necessary. We meant kind of whenever any human wanted to for virtually any reason other than just, the most gratuitous cruelty. All right, I've taken a long time to lead up to this question. Why do people harm animals when they don't have to? You've now established that this is terrible harm to extraordinary beings. We don't really have to. Do you think there's an underlying streak of sadism in all of the work that you've seen and how cruel people can be to animals? Is there something wrong with us?
That's a big question. I mean, yes, I have definitely seen something that you can only define as sadism in the laboratory. I mean, we have experimenters who think it's funny to torture animals, which means that they know that they're torturing them. They know that they're causing them fear and harm and pain, but they think it's amusing. And we've got them on tape laughing and giggling about it. So yes, there's sadism. There's also career paths that some people get on a track and they stay on it because no one taps them on the shoulder and says, excuse me, you're hurting these animals, but you've never accomplished anything. You haven't found a cure for anything. This is just curiosity. Let's call it a day. So there's that. And then there is this thing called the mirror neuron, which you may be familiar with, I'm sure. Some people have a seat of empathy that's well developed and others do not. And some have one that's undeveloped, and that's where you get psychopathic killers and so on. So the degree of understanding and the degree of callousness definitely shifts from person to person.
It's a much more powerful reason to understand that everybody who does care has to do something about it, because there really are a lot of people who just don't or can't care. So yeah, it has to be done on a political level. One place that I'd like to talk about specifically, because PETA has had such extraordinary success in the past year, is fur, with all of these fashion houses that you have been targeting for a long time. And now, all of a sudden, it seemed like every week, Chanel, Coach, Gucci, Prada, it was just crazy. How did this happen? It's so funny. I'm saying this happened so fast, but it happened so fast after a very long time.
That's right.
Why do you think that happened? What was the key there?
I think it always happens. It's persistence pays. And I tell people who get depressed, they say, we've been at this for so long trying to do whatever it is that we're trying to do. And you say, yes. But how long? 40 years, 30 years did it take to close Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey Circus? And it took standing outside in the cold, holding a banner saying, don't go inside, showing the videos, going to the government, finding out the undercover investigative stuff. It's the same with everything. So it looks like, the comedian says, I'm an overnight success. And they say, no, I'm not. I've been doing stand-up for all these years. And we have too. And we are deeply, deeply grateful to every single person who persists, because every letter, every email, every demonstration, don't be afraid of demonstrations. Get out there, have a great time. You'll meet new friends. Every single thing. And talking to others is so key. That we did meet behind the scenes. We negotiated. The little companies that started up, that started to make faux fur, and then they got better and better at it. And we showed examples. We sent stars, coats to replace the ugly fox ones or whatever they had. So it all came together. And it took time. And so persistence is everything. And I beg everyone, it's not just fur. Now we're on to leather for sure, environmental disaster, as well as being cruel. The animals need that hide. We don't. It's Angora, it's mohair, it's cashmere, it's wool. And let no one tell you that wool is just a haircut. Just look at the videos. We got a conviction just now in Australia and the UK for people in shearing sheds who just beat the hell out of these animals with the metal clipper, stand on their necks and so on. Nothing should be stolen from an animal. And if we forthrightly and frankly and persistently make that point, it won't just be fur that nobody wants. It'll be the rest of everything stolen from animals and for which animals are killed.
This brings up something about PETA that I've always wanted to talk to you about. There's an enormous focus now within the movement on eliminating or reducing the harm to animals in food production. And you, of course, have always focused on that. But you've also focused on other areas. Fur is one, and certainly animals in entertainment is another, which doesn't affect maybe as many animals, but I feel like may have an effect on on people waking up
Yes.
to who animals are and, these very visible kinds of animal use. Has that been a deliberate strategy?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, people have said, how many elephants are in the circus? And I've always thought children are taken to the circus. Children are taken to roadside zoos. I don't want a child to grow up with the idea that an elephant's place is standing on her head, wearing a stupid costume, having a woman on her back, being prodded with a bull hook, that fireplace poker thing. I don't want children to see that domination of wild animals or any animals is acceptable in society. So that visual had to go. And I think that sets the stage for more understanding of who are animals and how should we relate to them? Not that way.
Yeah, and I think fur is similar too. Like I remember when I was a kid that women used to have those fur stoles that had the actual head of the animal.
Oh yeah.
My aunt had one. And it was just so obvious that fur is an animal. And seeing everybody wear it, it just seemed very acceptable. And you had to change your whole mindset to understand that no, this isn't acceptable. Animals shouldn't be hanging around somebody's neck. They should be alive.
Well, you're extraordinary because when I was a child, I'm 70 now, I'm 70 and a quarter.
Oh, I'm going to be 70 in 2 months.
Are you? Well, we're on it together.
Yes.
The wise people we are.
I don't know about that, but you are. You are.
We've been there. When I was a child, my grandmother had one of those fox businesses, and it had multiple foxes on it, and they had glass eyes where their real eyes had been. And I actually thought it was wonderful. And I used to strut around in it and think, oh, isn't this wonderful? One day maybe I'll be able to have one. That's what I don't want children to even think for a second. So now when they see something that's being done that's exploitive or wretched to an animal, I want them to think, oh, look at that. Not that it's ordinary. It's not that it's, if you look at the old films, of course, they're all wearing these foxes with their paws and tails and so on.
Yeah.
And we have a collection of them downstairs. It's people send us their furs because they've had a change of heart. And we actually send them to Syrian refugee children for winter. We send them to places where no one would look at them and think, oh, I want one of those. I want to wear what that refugee is wearing. But it's something that you can't bring the animals back, will keep the kids warm, but is not something they'll ever buy.
So what are the most important opportunities for the animal movement right now? Is it still, I know a huge part of the movement has been just exposing, doing the undercover footage, letting people know what's going on. Are we still there, or are we moving into a new era of opportunities? And, I guess one of them I would want you to address is climate. I mean, I don't like to think of the climate catastrophe as an opportunity, but is it?
Well, for years, we've had a poster that says you can't be a meat and dairy eating environmentalist. There's no such thing. And for years, we've petitioned all the environmental groups to at least have their annual meetings or their conventions or whatever they're having be vegan. And they've just brushed us aside. Now, of course, nobody can avoid the issue. So finally, what we've been saying has come into the mainstream, the United Nations, the World Health Organization. No, you see these things that say you could fly from Los Angeles to London in England and fly back, and that still doesn't equal 2 cheeseburgers. So everyone's sort of getting it now. The thing is that we've got to be very careful about greenwashing, this humane washing, people trying, bless their hearts, to be more conscientious. And so you see things like people will not use plastic straws. That's great. But there's a far bigger issue. If you do care about the oceans and marine life in all its varied, magnificent forms, then don't eat fish.
Yeah.
Because what's killing most of the life forms in the oceans, including whales, dolphins, seals, turtles, is fishing gear that's discarded. These giant trawling nets, even tackle that's thrown in the ocean, regular nets. So don't eat fish, and then maybe you'll be doing something even bigger. And we see this humane washing with people saying, well, I only eat free-range organic eggs. Well, yes, you're trying, but please don't be hoodwinked. We have a lawsuit now against Nellie's Eggs, and they sell these packages. I see people in the supermarket. I always go up to them and say, "Oh, I notice you're buying."
I bet you do.
I do. I got to everybody. I mean, I've only got so much time left. Look, let's go. And the package of the eggs has lush green pastures and happy fluffy hens pecking about on them. And I say, "I bet you're buying those because of that." And they say yes. And I'll say, "Oh, please go to this website, PETA.org, and you will see what a fraud it is." There are wonderful eggless recipes, egg-free recipes. No one needs eggs anymore. They're cholesterol bombs anyway. And even chickens are contributing to climate change. So you might want to step away even further.